There's a kind of power that doesn't raise its voice. You felt it before, the moment a person walks into a room and everything shifts. The air changes, conversations soften, eyes flick toward them, not out of admiration but awareness. Something about them demands space, and yet they haven't said a word. No introductions, no declarations, just presence. That's not luck, that's design. It's a kind of quiet dominance that has no need for approval, no hunger for validation. It's the art of command without performance. Machiavelli understood it long before the word influence became a buzzword. He saw what most still don't, that the world bends not to those who shout, but to those who carry silence like a blade. Most people mistake noise for strength. They think influence is about persuasion, charisma, visibility. But visibility can be a trap. The more people see you, the more they measure you, define you, box you in. The silent strategist moves differently. He doesn't play for attention, he plays for position. He knows that perception, not sound, governs power. And perception can be shaped by how you stand, how you look at someone, how little you explain yourself. Because here's the truth, people don't fear what they understand. They fear what they can't quite read. The greatest influence begins where certainty ends. When people can't predict you, they watch you closer. When they can't label you, they speak your name more carefully. When they can't tell what you're thinking, they start to imagine it. And imagination, fueled by uncertainty, is a powerful weapon. That's what Machiavelli meant when he wrote that men judge more by the eye than by the hand. They don't know your heart, they only know what you let them see. Control that image and you control the narrative, not through explanation but through absence. Watch the masters of quiet power, the generals who never raise their tone, the leaders who speak once and are obeyed twice. The men and women who walk into chaos and somehow remain untouched. Their calm isn't weakness, it's a signal. It tells the world, I am not threatened. And when a person is not threatened, they become the threat. Fear and respect come from the same root, the recognition of something greater than oneself. The trick is to make others feel that recognition without forcing it. Silence, done right, creates that feeling naturally. Let's break something open here. Silence is not the absence of words, it's the presence of control. To stay silent when others speak requires discipline. To wait when others rush requires confidence. To choose stillness in a world addicted to reaction requires power. That's what makes silence unsettling. It breaks the rhythm everyone else is dancing to. It tells them, I don't need to keep up with you. You'll adjust to me. Machiavelli wrote that a prince should appear merciful, faithful, humane, sincere, religious, but with the mind so framed that should you require not to be so, you may be able and know how to change to the opposite. What he meant wasn't hypocrisy, it was control. The ability to appear as needed while remaining untouched by the chaos of others' expectation. Silence allows that. It hides your motives, conceals your shifts, makes people uncertain about what you truly are, and uncertainty breeds respect. Because people respect what they can't control. Here's the thing, in a noisy room, the one who doesn't need to speak becomes the most powerful voice. The loud demand attention, the quiet command it. The loud rely on words to prove themselves, the quiet rely on energy. Presence isn't about charisma, it's about calibration. Your tone, your movements, your stillness, they tell a story before you ever open your mouth. The great manipulators of history, from Machiavelli to Marcus Aurelius to modern-day tacticians, understood that the first battle for influence is not external, it's internal. You can't command others if you can't command your impulses. You can't control perception if you can't control expression. Every reaction reveals a weakness. Every unnecessary word a piece of armor removed. The silent strategist knows this. That restraint is not passive, it's pressure. Every second you don't react, you force the world to fill in the blanks, and what they imagine is often far greater than the truth. Fear, respect, they all live in the space between perception and understanding. The moment you explain yourself, you shrink that space. You make yourself knowable, predictable, safe. And safe things don't command reverence, they invite comfort. But you weren't meant to be comfortable. You were meant to be compelling. Think of a lion. It doesn't roar to prove its dominance, not until it needs to. Its silence is enough. The way it moves, the way it looks, the way it waits. Predators don't waste energy proving they're dangerous. They let silence carry the message. You can learn from that. The less you try to convince people of your worth, the more they begin to believe in it. That's not mysticism, it's psychology. Humans are wired to assign value to what's rare, and silence is rare in a world addicted to noise. Here's what most miss. Silence only works if it's backed by substance. You can't fake stillness, it must come from inner order. A quiet presence built on chaos just feels like hesitation, but a quiet presence built on control, that's magnetic. To get there, you have to become comfortable in your own company. You have to study yourself like Machiavelli studied power, clinically, without vanity. Where do you lose composure? What triggers your need to explain? What situations make you shrink? Every one of those reactions is a doorway to control, because once you can see it, you can master it. When you no longer chase understanding, you begin to project authority. You stop explaining and start embodying, and people feel that difference instantly. They feel it in the way you move slower than they expect, the way you don't rush to fill silence, the way your eyes hold theirs without flinching. That's not arrogance, that's awareness. The awareness that power doesn't come from words, it comes from gravity. The world is built around reaction. Algorithms reward it. Social circles demand it. Weak minds depend on it. But those who can stand still while others scramble, those are the ones who rise. They are the calm in the storm, the anchor in the noise. People cling to them without realizing why. Machiavelli would call this the appearance of virtue, not because it's fake, but because it's deliberate. The point isn't to deceive, it's to design how the world sees you. To command fear and respect without saying a word is to become fluent in stillness. It's to learn that the strongest posture is not always the one that dominates, it's the one that cannot be shaken. And this posture begins not in the body, but in the mind. Because when your thoughts stop racing for approval, your energy stops leaking. When your identity no longer bends to fit others' comfort, your presence becomes unmovable. That's what people feel, not your silence, but your certainty within it. So the question becomes, how do you build that certainty? How do you carry the kind of silence that doesn't just withhold, but commands? Certainty begins with observation. You can't command what you don't understand, and most people barely understand the room they're in. They enter conversations already planning what to say, not realizing that every unnecessary word drains presence. The silent strategist doesn't walk into a room to perform, he walks in to read. He studies how people posture when they feel small. He watches who laughs too loud, who interrupts, who seeks validation through volume. He notices the ones who measure themselves through attention. They are predictable, and predictability is weakness. To command respect, you must become unpredictable, not erratic, but unreadable. The kind of unreadable that makes people hesitate before crossing you. This doesn't mean being cold or detached. It means controlling the rhythm. If someone expects you to chase, pause. If they expect you to react, observe. If they expect emotion, offer calm. You shift their expectations one decision at a time until they can no longer anticipate you. That's how you take psychological ground, by forcing others to play your tempo. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. But fear, in his view, wasn't cruelty. It was predictability wrapped in mystery. The kind of fear that comes from knowing someone cannot be manipulated. People fear losing control around those who don't need their approval. Respect grows from that same soil. To make others respect you, you must show not through words, but through stillness that you do not depend on them. The less you depend, the more they depend on you. Every word you say, every look you give is a transaction of power. Most people give it away cheaply. They speak to fill silence, to prove existence, to mask insecurity. But when you stop explaining, you begin conserving energy. You start moving like a person who knows their value, not because someone told you so, but because you've stopped negotiating it. Silence becomes your currency, and it's priceless because it can't be imitated. People can copy confidence, mimic charisma, even fake empathy, but they can't fake grounded stillness. It's too rare, too anchored. Here's the paradox: the quieter you become, the louder your presence feels. That's because humans project meaning onto what they don't understand. When you withhold, they wonder. When you reveal little, they imagine much. And imagination creates the myth that sustains authority. Machiavelli didn't want princes to be gods, he wanted them to appear godlike. The appearance alone bends loyalty, because people want to believe in power greater than their own. When you carry silence with conviction, others fill it with their own interpretation. You become a mirror, they see what they need to see, and in that reflection, your influence multiplies. But silence is not a mask to hide behind. It's a weapon to wield carefully. There's a difference between calculated silence and passive withdrawal. The first controls the frame, the second concedes it. You control the frame by timing, knowing when to let a pause linger just long enough to make someone question their words, or when to look away just long enough to make them chase your attention. Every gesture carries weight when you move with intent. That's what makes the silent strategist different. He's not quiet because he's unsure. He's quiet because he's decided that noise serves no purpose. This kind of control doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from detachment. The ability to step back from your emotions, even while they roar inside you, to see the situation not from your ego, but from strategy. Machiavelli said a prince must learn how not to be good when necessity demands it. Translate that to psychology, and it means this. Learn when to detach from your need to be understood, liked, or vindicated. When you no longer crave emotional confirmation, your silence becomes unshakable, because no one can threaten what you don't need. Imagine this: someone challenges you, tries to provoke you. Most people respond immediately. They defend, argue, justify. But the silent strategist does none of that. He lets the words hang in the air, unacknowledged. He knows that silence creates discomfort, and discomfort reveals truth. The longer someone speaks into your quiet, the more they expose themselves. They reveal insecurity, desperation, weakness. By not reacting, you make their noise louder. By doing nothing, you turn their own energy against them. That's real dominance, not aggression, but precision. People fear silence because it confronts them with themselves. It forces reflection. It strips away the noise that makes them feel safe. And yet, that's where your power lives, in the space others avoid. When you can stand in that space without flinching, people feel it. They don't understand it, but they feel it. It's the kind of presence that makes them second-guess their own words, measure their tone, adjust their posture. You haven't demanded respect. You've created the conditions for it to grow naturally. Here's the quiet truth. Leadership isn't about control, it's about gravity. You don't pull people toward you by pushing, you draw them through stillness. Every movement, every glance becomes a cue. The way you listen tells them how much you value them. The way you wait tells them how much they can reveal before you need to respond. The way you stand tells them how centered you are, and people follow center. They follow stability in a world that's constantly spinning. That's why the silent leader commands respect, because everyone else is trying to prove they exist while he simply is. There's a story, maybe you've heard a version of it, about a king who never smiled. His people feared him, but they also trusted him. They said he could read a lie before the liar finished speaking. One day, a young courtier asked him, "Why do you never speak in council? Your silence makes men uneasy." The king replied, "If I speak, I tell them what I know. If I stay silent, I learn what they hide." That's the entire strategy distilled. Power listens more than it talks. Machiavelli's genius wasn't that he glorified manipulation, it's that he understood the mechanics of perception. To command without speaking is to understand what perception needs to survive: tension. Without tension, people lose interest. Without uncertainty, they lose respect. Your silence, when used right, creates that tension. It keeps people slightly on edge, wondering where they stand with you. And that wondering keeps them invested. They seek your approval without realizing it, adjust their behavior to avoid your disapproval, and in that adjustment, you gain influence. You become the mirror that distorts just enough to teach people how to stand straighter, not through fear of punishment, but through desire for acknowledgement. That's Machiavelli's silent strategy: power through psychological gravity. You don't fight for position, you become the position everyone orbits around. But here's the part most never reach. Once you master silence, you must learn when to break it. The moment you do speak, it should carry the weight of all the silence that came before it. Every word should feel earned. That's how great rulers, philosophers, and thinkers move hearts, not through abundance, but through precision. A single sentence spoken from composure can shift an entire room, because people trust the rare voice that doesn't need to be heard. You don't get there overnight. You get there by breaking the addiction to reaction, by catching yourself before explaining, defending, overreaching, by training your instincts to pause even 2 seconds longer than feels comfortable. That's where the shift happens. In those seconds, you reclaim control. Your body stops mirroring other people's chaos. Your words stop spilling to fill silence. You start to own the space between action. And that space, that invisible pause, is where influence is born. It's not about intimidation, it's about awareness. The kind that makes you so tuned into yourself that nothing external can dictate your state. That's what Machiavelli meant by mastery, not dominance over others, but sovereignty over one's own mind. When you have that, silence is no longer restraint, it's expression. Every pause says, "I know who I am, I know what matters, I choose what to reveal." People feel that certainty like heat. It doesn't need language, it communicates through presence alone. That's why those who truly command fear and respect rarely explain themselves. Their actions, posture, and timing speak in a language older than words, a language of power written in stillness. The world doesn't need another voice shouting for validation. It needs minds that can hold their silence like a throne. That's where command begins, not in words, but in waiting. Command begins in the waiting, but it solidifies in observation. To see without reacting is to hold the upper hand. Most people watch only to respond, few watch to understand. The Machiavellian strategist knows that to control the game, you must first learn the players, their triggers, their hunger, their tells. Every person reveals themselves through impatience. The moment they feel unseen, they show you who they really are. That's when silence becomes a weapon sharper than any word, because it draws out truth without effort. Think about the most intimidating people you've met. They didn't need to threaten. They didn't even need to posture. They simply saw more than they said. Their gaze lingered half a second too long. Their pauses made others fill the air with nervous chatter. The power wasn't in what they did, it was in what they withheld. That's the essence of quiet dominance. When you stop feeding others your reactions, they start revealing themselves to you like open books. And once you understand someone's fears, their desires, their need to be seen, you control the current of interaction. Machiavelli warned that appearances are everything in politics, but the real insight behind that isn't vanity, it's leverage. When people believe they can read you, they stop fearing you. When they can't, they start respecting the mystery. The appearance of stillness tells them, nothing you say can touch me, and that, more than aggression, breeds control. But make no mistake, this is not about pretending to be emotionless. Emotion has power. The problem is when it's visible. When your anger leaks through tone, when your insecurity hides behind too many words, when your pride answers a challenge too quickly, you've been disarmed before the first move. The silent strategist feels everything but shows nothing. His face is a mirror, his tone unchanging, his movements deliberate. He's not suppressing himself, he's channeling. All that energy that others spill through expression, he holds within. That's what gives him presence that feels heavier than sound. You can train this. It begins with awareness, the discipline to notice your impulses before they escape, the itch to interrupt, the urge to defend, the instinct to fill silence when someone pauses. Each of those impulses is a leak in your power. The fix isn't to suppress them, but to observe them, to sit in that discomfort until you realize that silence doesn't hurt you. It exposes others. Watch what happens when you let silence breathe. Someone challenges you, expecting a quick response, and you just look at them, calm, unreadable. That pause stretches seconds into tension. They start to backfill the quiet with their own assumption. Did I say too much? Is he angry? Is she unimpressed? The human mind can't tolerate uncertainty for long, so it creates stories to fill the gap. And every story they invent gives you control, because they're now reacting to a narrative you never had to write. That's how Machiavellian silence works, not through domination, but through redirection. You let others expose themselves while you remain unmoved. Eventually, they start to crave your approval, your acknowledgement, your reaction. And once they crave it, you own the tempo. You can give it, withhold it, or redirect it, all without a single word. That's not manipulation. That's mastery of human nature. The beauty of this approach is that it scales. It works in conversation, in leadership, in conflict. Because silence speaks the same truth everywhere. I am not dependent on your reaction. People interpret that as strength because it is. And strength in its purest form doesn't need to advertise itself. Still, there's a trap here, one that swallows many who try to practice detachment. They confuse silence with isolation, stillness with coldness. But power without warmth becomes tyranny. You must balance gravity with grace. The true strategist knows when to use silence to create tension, and when to break it to create connection. Commanding fear without respect makes people obey only until they can escape. Commanding respect without fear makes people love you but never follow you. The art lies in the balance, just enough distance to inspire reverence, just enough humanity to inspire loyalty. Machiavelli called it the appearance of compassion. He didn't mean false virtue. He meant calculated empathy. Show kindness rarely, but when you do, make it undeniable. Speak softly after long silence, and your words will echo. Offer understanding when they least expect it, and your silence will feel like wisdom, not distant. It's not about performance, it's about rhythm. Power is rhythm. Speak when it matters, pause when it counts, withdraw when your presence becomes expected. Influence fades where familiarity grows unchecked. Silence teaches restraint, and restraint breeds depth. People who are constantly talking rarely think deeply. Their words replace thought, but those who can sit in their own stillness learn to think strategically, to view life not as a series of reactions, but as a board of choices. Every word becomes a move, every silence becomes a trap, every reaction withheld becomes an advantage stored for later. That's how Machiavelli saw politics, not as chaos, but as chess played in shadows. The quiet strategist understands this instinctively. He knows that perception always moves before reality. You shape what people think before you shape what they do. And silence, true, unwavering silence, is the perfect tool for sculpting perception. It gives others room to project power onto you, to imagine complexity, to sense danger without evidence. You become mythic not by claiming greatness, but by allowing mystery. But the real magic of commanding fear and respect lies in where it leads, inward. Because the ultimate goal isn't to dominate others. It's to master yourself so completely that external control becomes unnecessary. When you no longer need validation, your energy changes. When you no longer crave reaction, your words gain precision. When you no longer fear being misunderstood, your silence becomes sacred. That's the transformation Machiavelli hinted at beneath his pragmatism, the shift from seeking power to embodying it. It's a lonely evolution at first. The quieter you become, the more the world will test you. People will misinterpret your stillness as indifference, your calm as weakness. They'll prod, provoke, question. But that's the point. Silence purifies your motive. It filters out the noise that never mattered. Over time, those who matter will recognize it for what it is, control, not apathy. Every great leader, philosopher, and warrior has walked through that fire. To reach true authority, you must first endure being misunderstood. You must watch others project their insecurities onto your silence and learn to let them. Because the moment you feel the need to correct every false perception, you've already surrendered your power. Machiavelli would call this the patience of the throne. The throne doesn't chase opinions, it outlasts them. And this is where the deeper transformation happens, when silence stops being a tactic and becomes your nature. You don't use it to control anymore, you use it to see, to sense what others miss, to think clearly where others panic, to recognize patterns before they fully form. Silence gives you the time others waste in reaction, and time is the ultimate weapon. You'll notice something strange as this happens. People start mirroring your calm. They speak softer around you. They measure their words. They sense that noise is unwelcome in your space. And soon, that space becomes your kingdom. Not because you demanded it, because you cultivated it. You became the still point others orbit around. That's how power works in its purest form. Not through domination, but through gravity. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he wasn't just teaching rulers how to manipulate, he was teaching readers how to survive in a world of manipulation. His silent strategy wasn't about cruelty, it was about composure, about building a presence so centered that no force, love, fear, betrayal could unseat it. The kind of stillness that turns power from something you chase into something you are. You don't have to be royal to master that. You just have to stop letting your emotions announce themselves before your thoughts do. Stop giving away your state of mind for free. Let people wonder where you stand, and you'll find they start standing more carefully around you. That's not arrogance. That's command. Fear and respect will follow, but they won't be the prize. The real prize is peace, the kind of peace that no one can take from you, because it's rooted in control, not comfort. You'll speak less, move slower, think clearer, and your silence will start to carry weight that words never could. That's when you'll understand what Machiavelli meant all along, that the most powerful voice is the one that can choose when not to speak. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize words have limits, when persuasion stops working, when charm dissolves, when even logic falls flat, and all that's left is present. That's the threshold where real power begins, the kind that doesn't need validation because it radiates certainty. You don't announce it, you don't display it, you simply become it. This is where Machiavelli's silent strategy turns inward, from a way of influencing others to a way of mastering yourself. Because the truth is, fear and respect are mirrors. They don't exist in others until they first exist in you. People fear betraying someone who has self-discipline. They respect someone who respects their own silence. The energy you command outwardly is only ever a reflection of the authority you've built inwardly. So you start closing the links. Every time you're tempted to defend yourself, you pause. Every time you want to prove your worth, you breathe. Every time someone's tone invites reaction, you stay still long enough to feel your heartbeat slow. That's where transformation hides, not in grand declarations, but in micro decisions made in silence. The way a swordsman learns by standing still until stillness itself becomes his weapon, and slowly, people start to change around you. They stop testing your boundaries because they sense their futility. They stop pushing for validation because they see you don't barter attention. You become a kind of mirror that reflects others' chaos without absorbing it. And in a world built on reaction, that's terrifying because you're no longer predictable. Predictability is what keeps people comfortable. When you remove it, they don't know whether to admire you or fear you, so they do both. That duality is the sweet spot. It's what kings, generals, and philosophers all discovered in their own ways. You must make yourself felt, not understood. Understanding brings you down to their level. Being felt places you above it. There's an art to this balance. Too much mystery and you alienate. Too much openness and you lose your edge. Machiavelli knew this, that a ruler must be both lion and fox, both danger and patient. Silence allows you to be both at once. It cloaks the fox's calculation in the lion's stillness. It lets you decide when to reveal which face. You become many things in one body, but you never have to explain any of them. Here's what most people never grasp. Silence doesn't mean inaction. It's the incubation of decisive action. When others react, they waste energy. You conserve it. You wait until emotion has burned off and only clarity remains. Then when you do act, when you finally move, speak, decide, it hits with the force of inevitability. People confuse it for intuition, but it's not. It's calculation that's had time to mature in the dark. That's how great leaders move, not by constant noise, but by precise timing. The world may not understand it, but they feel it, that rhythm of delayed revelation. The way power unfolds like a slow tide instead of a sudden storm. It's what makes presence unforgettable. Not the words, not the gestures, but the timing. And let's be honest, this world rewards the loud. It amplifies the ones who shout first and think later. But those who endure, they move like shadows. They let the noise eat itself alive. And when the smoke clears, they're the only ones still standing. That's the essence of Machiavellian silence, patience disguised as invisibility. Because you don't need to be seen every moment to control the outcome. So you start practicing invisibility, not absence, invisibility. You listen more than you speak. You observe the energy of rooms before entering them. You watch how people shift under silence, how truth leaks through fidgeting hands and restless eyes. You begin to see the difference between those who want attention and those who hold power. Attention is borrowed, power is owned. You stop arguing, you stop explaining. You start deciding who deserves access to your words. And the fewer people that qualify, the more sacred your speech becomes. You begin to notice that people listen differently when you finally speak. Their posture changes, their breathing stills. Because silence has turned your voice into an event. And that's the highest level of command, when your words become so rare they can't be ignored. Machiavelli would call that the economy of presence, the deliberate rationing of yourself. You give the world less, but what you give becomes priceless. That's the paradox. You create more influence by offering less access. Because mystery fuels imagination, and imagination always paints you larger than you are. That's not deception, that's psychological design. You're not lying about your power, you're letting others build the myth for you. And yet beneath that design there must be depth. Otherwise the silence collapses. You can't just act calm, you have to be calm. You can't perform stillness, you have to live it. It's not costume, it's character. That's why the silent strategist trains alone, thinks deeply, and guards his energy like currency. Because every conversation, every emotion, every reaction has a cost. And power in the end belongs to those who spend their attention wisely. But here's what no one tells you. The longer you live in this kind of self-command, the less you need others to fear you. You no longer crave the proof of dominance. Fear was just the first layer, the raw signal of your transformation. Once you transcend it, respect takes its place. And then finally something quieter, reverent. Not worship, not submission, but recognition. People begin to sense that being around you changes them. That your silence challenges their noise, that your composure exposes their lack of it. You stop inspiring fear and start evoking discipline. That's where Machiavelli's lessons end, not in control, but in transcendence. Because the ultimate mastery of fear and respect is realizing you no longer need it. You've built something deeper, equilibrium. The ability to remain unshaken, whether praised or condemned, loved or betrayed. You've turned silence from strategy into sanctuary. And in that stillness, everything becomes clear. You see how much noise the world is built on, how most people confuse movement for progress, talking for thinking, volume for vision. You see that fear is just the shadow of dependency, and respect the echo of self-respect. You see that the strongest voice is not the one that silences others, but the one that silences itself until only truth remains. The irony is that once you reach that point, once your silence becomes your language, people start calling you mysterious, powerful, even intimidating. They'll whisper that you see through them, that you must be calculating something they can't name. Let them. The truth is simpler. You're no longer ruled by the need to be understood. You've learned that control isn't about bending others, it's about not bending yourself. And that realization, quiet, invisible, absolute, is the moment you cross the line between influence and mastery. You no longer command fear and respect. You embody the state that creates them. You move through the world like a tide no one can command, a force no one can predict. You speak rarely, but when you do, your words reshape the silence they break. You listen not to reply, but to read. You act not to prove, but to define. You've become the person Machiavelli described without ever trying to imitate him, the ruler of your own presence, the one who governs their reactions, who measures their movements, who builds power not from conquest but from composure. And when the time comes, when all the noise finally fades, when others have exhausted themselves trying to be seen, you'll still be there, quiet, centered, commanding the room without a single word. Because that's the real secret. You don't have to speak to be heard. You don't have to threaten to be feared. You don't have to demand to be respected. You just have to become the kind of silence that makes others question their own noise. That's Machiavelli's silent strategy, not manipulation, not deceit, but mastery. The art of carrying such gravity in your stillness that even the loudest voices fall quiet around you. And when you can do that, when your silence speaks louder than power ever could, you'll understand what it truly means to command fear and respect without saying a word.